Also, more often than not, people tend to believe that, in order for you to become successful, there should be an element of luck or, nature actually helping you or putting you in a position that eventually makes you to be ahead of others. Well, I don't entirely disagree with that. However, I believe that as an individual, you've also got to do something in order to trigger that success. Because to think about it, Napoleon Hill went about interviewing hundreds and hundreds of millionaires. And afterwards, he realized that, there were a couple of principles that did run through all these people. There were some, discipline, some form of values that they all did share. And in this video, I just want to break down 5 of those principles that Napoleon Hill found out to be very important, especially if you want to go on and become successful in life generally. So the first thing that he talks about is the definite chief aim or your goal in life. So Napoleon Hill believes that in order for you to become successful in life, you need a goal. And not just any goal, but a definite goal. Not just setting any goal that is too ambiguous. For example, people say, oh yeah, I'll buy a car. That is not a goal. Napoleon Hill says that in order for you to be able to qualify a goal as a definite chief aim, you need to make sure that that goal is, one, prioritized, and then secondly, it is defined. So in this instance, you're not just going out there to get any car, but you're going out there to get, maybe, for example, a Mercedes CLA or, a Mercedes G-Wagon made of this, the color and everything should be detailed all out. And you should give yourself a stipulated time. That is a definite goal. And then, of course, if it is possible, come out with actionable plans on how to attain that goal. Secondly, Napoleon Hill believes that all the people that he interviewed, all the successful and the rich people that he interviewed had one thing, and that was a strong desire. Not a desire, but a strong desire to achieve that definite chief aim. So it wasn't enough for them to just wish for things. There's so many of us who believe that, you've got just to wish for the thing and then eventually it just happens. No, you need a strong desire and you need to fuel that desire. So in order for you to have that strong desire, you need to make sure that you convince yourself beyond reasonable doubt. And this is what he calls, thirdly, the principle of applied faith. So he believes that, we are likely to go through several things and several challenges in life. However, we shouldn't let those challenges and those failures, those bad breaks and the predicaments set us back. We should try as much as possible and convince ourselves beyond reasonable doubt. There are sometimes, when you share your dreams that your family, your friends go on and say, oh, but these are too far-fetched. For me, for example, I sit with friends, I sit with family sometimes, and I share my goals, and they're like, well, why do you even want to do that? But of course, there is a definite chief aim, and the definite chief aim is that every year, hundreds of thousands of kids die out of starvation and poverty and hunger. And so if that is the case, then we should be able to do something, come up with, of course, it all boils down to money. You need money in order to help people. You need money in order to, help others, empower them, education-wise, health-wise, food, trying to sponsor programs by the WHO, the World Food and Agriculture Organization, and all that. All these things boil down to one thing, and that is money. That is my definite chief aim, to help people, to assist them to live beyond the level of economic subsistence and to push them, above this whole life of living paycheck to paycheck, having, constantly getting by, and you're struggling. You have to go to work even when you miss work, like in a day throughout the month. It's like your life is grounded to a halt. These things are not healthy in my opinion, and that is why I back my actions out with a definite chief aim and of course a strong desire in order to achieve these things. Now this brings us to the fourth point, which is imagination. Imagination is the single most important thing that you need to do in order for you to convince yourself to achieve your goals. So I had the privilege to read the works and the autobiography of the greatest, whom I consider to be the greatest inventor of all time, and that is Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla said that, when he was a child, he'd sleep and then eventually he'd think about his innovation. So once he wakes up, then everything comes to reality for him and then he starts producing. So he actually goes on to imagine everything that he produced in his sleep. Sometimes he'd probably be there daydreaming, and then the innovations are just running through his head. Think about it. Every single thing that you see out there is as a result of imagination. This cup right now was designed in someone else's mind before it was eventually produced. This phone right here and these, soft boxes and everything was designed in someone else's mind. Your house was designed in an architect's mind before eventually he or she drew it on paper, and then he went on to sell that to your developer, and then now you have a house. Just as it happened in the Bible. The Bible says, God called those things which were not as though they were, which means that was the exercise of the power of imagination, even by God himself. So he called those things, he called the trees, he called everything when he was creating the earth, and then he brought all those things into being because he first of all imagined those things in his mind. Why am I saying this? I believe that there are so many people who don't even sit down in a single day to think about the life that they can actually live. I always go on to tell my wife, babes, do you think about how we are going to be rich in future? Do you think about how we are going to give tens of millions of pounds to people, support them, how we are going to clothe people, feed people, house people? Do you think about those things in the future? You should be able to perceive them before you actually go on to achieve them. And that is it. That Napoleon Hill rightfully says that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And that is my greatest quote, and I apply it in so many spheres of my life. That first of all, you need to conceive it in your mind, and then eventually convince yourself to believe it, and then you see how easy it would become for you to achieve it. This brings us to the last point, which is the principle of sex transmutation. So Napoleon Hill simply believes that all the men and the women that he interviewed had one common principle, and that is the principle of sex transmutation. Now, transmutation simply means to convert. So sex transmutation simply means to take the power or the desire of sex and then convert it into something much more fruitful, something much more beneficial. For example, like the attainment of your goals or your definite chief aim. So he realized that all these men that really went on to become successful in life actually did shy away from, exposure to the opposite sex, at least for a certain amount of time, because they wanted to focus all their energy, all their strength, their skill set, and their talent on that definite chief aim. And then eventually, after they've achieved it, then they went on, to exercise. Of course, sex is a desire in one way or the other. And so they went on to do all these things. But it was after they had gone on to achieve their definite chief aim that they went on to do all these things. And so that is it. You have it. These are the 5 principles. Of course, I'll be shooting a whole video to explain the 13 principles, in all that he believes actually would guarantee your success in every endeavor that you go on to pursue. Thank you.